From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, starting the podcast before we were all entirely ready. And those of you watching the video saw that I maybe started too soon. Anyway, welcome to Cues of the Force. This is our episode where we take questions from listeners. This week we have questions from our Discord. Everyone on Discord is also a patron, so thank you all very much. Also, in the complete honesty category, we spent a lot of our recording time on that 2-hour and 20-minute episode we released earlier this week. So this has to be a shorter episode of Cues because we are all late for meetings already. Anyway, it's great to be here. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. I think there's a guy waiting outside my house now to buy a car that I'm selling. So he's going to have to wait. I got to talk about Kenobi.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, I'm Jennifer Landa. We're going to make it quick.
That's
we can do
right.
it. We can do it.
This will be very fun. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. For 180,000 titles, shoot from iPhone, fan, Android, Kindle, and MP3 player. This week, we're recommending Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. Download your free audiobook today. Go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for free audiobook. There we go.
Remember that guy from Micro Machines?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
Lovely. So true.
Ken, what are our asks?
Oh, hey, we're asking you to check out Patreon, patreon.com/ForceCenter. We're looking to get to 415 paid supporters there. Once we go over there, we're going to do a private live stream for all of you on Patreon. Supporters at patreon.com/ForceCenter.
Nailed it. Jennifer, would you like to say anything fast for fun?
No,
Okay.
but I had to read some copy once for a commercial, and I had to do just that. It was very awkward and very difficult.
Yes, make it really natural, but say it really doubly fast than a human should. Isn't that fun? All right, we will get into our cues and try to take a little bit more time with them. This first one comes to us from Andrew McNaboo Fighter. Andrew McNaboo Fighter. And Andrew has a very direct question. Who was the bigger failure, Anakin as a Jedi or Obi-Wan as a mentor? This is painful. I'm going to have to work it out with my action figures. Jennifer, where do you start with this question? Is it an easy answer for you?
Very easy. Anakin made choices. It was his choices. He chose the dark side. Obi-Wan, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. He has no control over what Anakin's going to do. He did the best he could. Wasn't abusive. He was, he was not neglectful, right? Like Anakin chose anger and hate and bad stuff. So Anakin is at fault. He's a bigger failure.
Ken, who is the biggest failure in Star Wars? No, that's not the question. What is your starting point? We'll talk about this more, obviously. But do you have an instinct for you about who is a bigger failure?
I love that this is almost a mini subjective wars. It's Anakin. That's my starting point. That's my instinct. That's where I'll end up. Not to say that there aren't many things Kenobi and the Jedi Order and maybe Mace Windu and his hard stares did wrong, or didn't do wrong. Like they did wrong. They did wrong. Is what I'm trying to say. But Anakin, that's my starting point. Anakin.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot of like, I feel like that's the story of Star Wars. We can get into, how much of the real world do you want to apply about, obviously Anakin is the product of trauma, and maybe the mentors around him did not help that child through his trauma as well as they should have. And there, you can apply some very real world stuff to it. But in terms of the story that I think Star Wars is wanting to tell is that it's a morality tale. And we're all faced with those moments where we can choose hope or fear. And he could have hoped that maybe Obi-Wan can help me, maybe the Jedi can help me, maybe Padme and I can run away, and Padme and I can handle this. He didn't choose hope; he chose fear. I can't handle it if anything happens to Padme, so I will lash out and make this choice. And then he's stuck with his choice. So I think that is the moral of Star Wars: is Anakin's choice is his choice, just like Luke's choice to show his father mercy is Luke's choice. That said, I also think the story of Star Wars is that Obi-Wan believes that he failed him because he says it multiple times. I
have failed you, Anakin.
Yes. Let's talk just a little bit about Anakin. We're all on the same page that Anakin failed as a Jedi, and his choice is his choice. But Jennifer, how do you fault him? How do you think he made that wrong choice, and how do you think he could have made a better choice?
He was possessive of Padme and basically doesn't want to, let her live her own life. He's selfish. He wants control over everything. He goes and, tries to avenge his mother's death, or he does. All he does is basically give into his hate and his anger. It is what over and over again. He's selfish. He stews on things. Not a good person. Not a good person.
These are strong, Attack the Clones emo Anakin feelings, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think all those things are an expression of this really sad core thing. That one of the reasons I love Attack of the Clones, and I think people should give it more credit. That scene in the garage where he's telling her, it was so much easier when I could just fix things, and he's fixing that little mechanical part, and like I used to just be able to fix anything that's broken, and this man can't accept. It's what Yoda's trying to tell him at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. There are some things you can't control. There's some things that are getting broken and wounded, and yep, you should try to stop them, but you're not always going to be able to. And like that's hard. That's a hard lesson. I still struggle with that. So like I think that's what's powerful about his stories. It's relatable to be like, what if I was powerful enough that bad things didn't happen? And he can't accept that no one has that level of power. That's not what life is. I think that to me is this kind of the core failing of he couldn't accept that he can't fix everything. Ken, how do you feel about Anakin's failure? Why did he fail? How could he have made a better choice?
Look, I'll defend him to a little bit. He is a good little boy at heart, Chad. He's still good in him. There's still good in him. But I he had a bad set of circumstances. We joke, but he shows up at Phantom Menace, and hey, I'd like to learn with you. And they're all like, "What are you cold? What are you cold, kid? You missed your mom, little brat." It was a tough start. Tough start. And it kind of carried all its way through. And Anakin did fail him in a lot of ways, without a doubt. But I look at Anakin as it is the big lesson in Star Wars. I believe that's true. And I think he's stubborn. I think he has a right to be angry and not trust everyone around him. Again, you can factor in some of the Ahsoka stuff that we learned later on. I'm kind of just focusing right now on the 6 films. But, I think that's, to me, Return of the Jedi is him finally taking responsibility for his actions. And even though there's a lot of mistakes along the way, and you're right, Joseph, this runs up against real world stuff to a point where I want to put a caveat of like, maybe does not apply to your own life if you're listening. Like, there's real life out there. But I think to me, Return of the Jedi is him going, you know what, at the end of the day, I did this. And at the end of the day, I can undo this. And I'm going to break the cycle right here, right now. And I think that's part of the journey. So yeah, along the way, bad start. Bad things along the way. I'm thinking of that Anakin. There's so many times in Clone Wars, the Anakin Obi-Wan, so you like a girl conversation that should have gone a little better. A lot of things along the way should have gone better. But at the end of the day, as Jen said up top, the only parent here, he made some choices.
The other thing I will say for Anakin is like, yes, there's a lot of trauma. He didn't have some good leadership sometimes. You know who told him how to make the right choices? His mom and his wife. And I feel like to maybe
constantly
his mom tells him you can't stop the suns from setting. You can't stop the change anymore than you can stop the suns from setting. She tries to tell him the vital lesson he needs is that you can't control everything. Things are going to change and you just need to make your choices. It's okay. Padme tells him, why don't we just walk away from all this? Padme tells him you can't fix everything. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we've all known some men in our lives. Perhaps sometimes it's ourselves, where you do something dumb and a friend goes, "Didn't your mom tell you not to do that? Didn't your wife tell you not to do that? What did you do? You did the dumb thing." It's, as much as people failed him, he had a wife and a mom who told him every bleeping thing he needed to hear, and he didn't listen.
Yeah, I think of that Attack. I really like that Attack of the Clones conversation, and it's used maybe sometimes to say, hey, Anakin and Padme didn't have the best relations, and and Jen, jump in if I'm saying anything wrong or disagree, but if just that like Padme allowed, here he is going, I killed women and children. She's like, well, they're there. to take that aside, that's a real world conversation, maybe. But I love that conversation because it's everything you're saying, Joseph. It's him going, it used to be so easy. I could just fix my pod racer wizard. I could do this, and that wasn't the reality. And she was giving him some of the best advice he ever got, and he was too stubborn and maybe too down on himself to take it. Right? I think he was already defeated by that point. He was already down a slippery slope by Attack of the Clones. And look, at the end of the movie, he's making more mistakes. He just keeps making mistakes. You know, Anakin, no, don't do Anakin. No, don't do Anakin. We can't go back for Anakin. Like, it's constant, and he's constantly. I think it's almost like he's trying to climb up a ledge he can't get up. But I don't know.
Now we talked a bit about Anakin, but we can't let my pal Kenobi off the hook. How did Obi-Wan fail as a mentor? Jennifer, what are your thoughts on how Obi-Wan did fail Anakin? Since Obi-Wan believes he did.
He'd offered a little bit too much tough love, I would say. You know, maybe he wasn't always the most sympathetic or empathetic. Didn't give him tell him that he criticized him more than he gave him praise, you know. So yeah, he could have been a little bit more loving in that respect. But he tried his best. As all mentors, parents, you know, we try. But at the end of the day, our children make their choices, right? And so it's like, I would not fault Obi-Wan because, like I said, he did his best. He wasn't cruel, right? So, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and he gave him lots of good guidance, but and there are a lot of great moments in canon storytelling where I think he was a loving figure and told Anakin what he wanted to hear, but the failure remains. So, Ken, how do you think Obi-Wan failed?
I think I look at the beginning of the relationship, and he takes on this role of mentor. And did he need a father figure? Did he need a brother figure? But I think in the initial stages of it, it was Obi-Wan wants to live up to what Qui-Gon wanted versus what Anakin needed. I think there's some idea of just looking at I look at it from a coaching's perspective because I don't have the parental perspective, but of like coaching the player on what they need and how they need and knowing them as an individual versus you in your system as a mentor and a teacher. Jedi Order is a big system. And I think then you got Qui-Gon saying, hey, I'm dying, buddy. My last wish is train him. Not, you know, can you go, there's a cupboard I want you to clear out in my apartment. Can you go get that? No, can you take the boy? Train him. And so I think Anakin had a bad starting spot. And then along the way, he's in his head a little bit and makes mistakes. Doesn't trust him. That's some of the most important things in the Clone Wars series into Revenge of the Sith is people, Mace Windu, one of them, not giving Anakin that trust. And so that he wasn't allowed to maybe make decisions and mistakes on a smaller level. Therefore, he makes them on a bigger level. And I think Kenobi gets in his cups about that. Literally with Kenobi, as we know, loves a good bar, and can't crawl out of that too until it's maybe too late. And then naturally, and he did fail him on some. We're not talking about two outright successes here. We're talking about two people entwined in a very giant galactic stakes failure. But I think that's part of what I love about the Kenobi series is Kenobi knowing his part and what actually was his mistakes versus what Anakin eventually became, which wasn't necessarily him.
Yeah, no, I mean, he does get a little bit of like, yep, at the end of the day, no matter what mistake I made, Anakin chose this. I think is a big part of the, I am not your failure. Yeah, I agree. I've always really loved the story of Obi-Wan was just about to start his own life and suddenly like, I got a kid to raise and I'm not really prepared for that. I was focused on my own adulthood, not raising a kid. And so I kind of want to be his fun brother rather than this father figure that Anakin so clearly needs. I think it's very purposeful. It's some of George's, I think, great precision writing that Anakin always refers to Obi-Wan as a father figure. And Obi-Wan says, you were my brother. I loved you. Not you were my son. I loved you. And I think that divide is hard for him. I think there's this great contrast where Obi-Wan himself can be very flowing and intuitive. That's one of the greatest things about his character, where he's like, well, everybody's going those three paths and don't think there's another one. Surprise, fourth path. But he doesn't teach Anakin in an intuitive ways. He's like, watch the Jedi YouTube video. There are 3 bullet points. Why did you diverge from the 3 bullet points? And he's not a listener. He's a lecturer as a teacher. And, there's that great teaching, metaphor of, you need to show the student where the door is, but they have to walk through it. And I feel like Obi-Wan's like, there's the door, and shoves him through, and like doesn't
Get in there.
doesn't give him the room, as you said, Ken. Like he's just coaching. He's not coaching that particular player the way that that player needs to be coached. I also think a concrete one is that Kenobi just didn't respond to some of the warning signs enough. I feel like that's something that Kenobi's got to be like, I knew he was in a relationship with Padme, but every time I tried to broach the subject, I let him push me away, I knew it was a problem, but I kind of didn't let myself see how big of a problem it was. I also got to feel with the way Kenobi clearly feels about politics in Palpatine. He's like, yeah, I know he's getting lots of thoughts from creepy Uncle Palpatine, and want to give the kid some space to be his own person. But I also know he's hanging out with, like, I'm not saying Kenobi knew he was a Sith, but I think Kenobi must have known that Palpatine was selling him on the, you're the greatest Jedi ever. Like, it should have been a warning sign that Anakin was such a stan of this power hungry politician. And Kenobi, I think, was like, yeah, it's kind of a problem, I know, and I'll lecture him about it once in a while, but should have done some more.
There's an angle for me where I look at Kenobi and he kind of both sides the politics of the galaxy at the time. He's like, I stay out of politics, Anakin. Anyways, you're hanging out with that guy? I don't know. And it created a vacuum for Palpatine to...
Yeah. Yep. All right. Any final thoughts on the failures of Anakin and Obi-Wan? Ken?
No, it's a close call, but in the end, Anakin for me.
Yeah. Jen, any further thoughts?
No, it's got to be Anakin. If you make bad choices, then you have to deal with those choices.
Anakin made the choice. He brags about it. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And Ken, to your great point, takes responsibility for his own actions and makes a different choice in Return of the Jedi. So a victory for Anakin and Obi-Wan in the end. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment to discuss another question. And we are back. This one comes to us from Rick V on Discord. Thank you, Ken, for soliciting these Discord questions and passing them along here. Yeah. Here's what Rick has to say. I talk a lot about perspectives and Star Wars, as you know, Ken. But when was the first time you each felt that Star Wars was speaking to you? When was that first moment of realization that Star Wars had something to say to, or more specifically, about you? Ken, where do you start with this one?
It's raised on this stuff in the 80s and live in that era. And a lot of it spoke to me on that general way of fantasy. This is what I took to. And there's a lot of moments of Luke staring off in the sunset and me wanting to be Han Solo and being fortunate to see myself on screen there and all those things. Like, I want to pull something from there, but I was thinking long and hard again, and it's a boring answer because I've kind of answered before, but come around to Force Awakens and what happens with Han and everything about Han. And I always spent my life wanting to be Han Solo, but the version that Han thought he was too. So that meant I spent my whole life trying to be something else, another version of myself versus what was inside, and you keep running away from that. It's something I still struggle professionally a lot too. Just like I know I could be, I know there's something else inside me, but I run away. I turn my back from it a lot, and to see that happening with Han, and I highlight again. I'll short summary, but and calling into Jedi Alliance when you and Mark Donica, Joseph were breaking it down, and I wasn't happy with Han's death, and this is my guy, and he died, and I don't think it was worth anything, and I saw it coming, and it was predictable, and I didn't like it, and you'd pointed out some pretty basic present themes that I just was choosing to overlook. Of Leia's last thing is go get our son, and so Han, for the first time in his GD life, sticks with what he wants to do or what he needs to do because that's who he should be, and he dies. And then the cheek touch that saved the galaxy in a way that we love so much. But so that also helped me, not only in my own life, to realize, all right, I'm turning my back on a lot of what's inside me and who I can be and who I can be better about. But in terms of the fandom, too, in 2015, you and I had been on Jedi Alliance. We were working with Jennifer Landa, the lady that went viral for a Star Wars wedding. We were doing Star Wars media. And I think a lot of folks, some of whom are listening to us now, who were younger when we were broadcasting, I felt like, oh, I have a place in this fandom. This is pretty cool. but also who am I in this fandom? And it was a movie, Force Awakens, about the shadows of the past, both the good and bad, hanging over everyone. And what is the next generation going to do with that? And what is your place in that next generation? And I wanted to be more Han, going, I like what she's saying. I like this kid. And yeah, occasionally I'll say, that's not how the Force works, but I'm here and we're not going to turn our back on things. I enjoyed that, and I felt represented in that way during that film.
That's great. That's fabulous. Jennifer, how about you? When did you realize that Star Wars had something to say to you or about you?
I feel like every points in my life, Star Wars has spoken to me in a different way, dealing with certain things that I've been dealing with that I needed. Star Wars met my needs, whether it was Empire in high school, Force Awakens at that point in my life, to recently with The Acolyte, where I've been dealing with some stuff and I've had some stuff. And for the first time, I was like, wow, how do we deal with trauma? What is the right answer? What might feel good, but we know is absolutely wrong? What does that look like on screen? How can that be cathartic? Who is justified in being angry or wanting revenge? And, how does that revenge look like? It just challenged me. And it also I felt so seen in a way for many reasons that show was really powerful for me. But I think that's the wonderful thing about Star Wars is that it's amazing how, I'll sit down and I'm not expecting it. And it's like this Star Wars is this wave that washes over me and it moves me. And it can be from Andor to Kenobi, whatever. It's just these little moments where it's like, oh, this is what I needed, Star Wars. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me that lesson or giving me that hope and speaking to my heart in that way. It's kind of like a religion. That's a conversation for another time. My husband and I were talking about that. Who are you, the Presbyterian? Are you the Baptist? What kind of?
I'm a Jedi.
And for another time, maybe 5 minutes from now, we should have that conversation. That's like a fascinating conversation. Great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I relate to relating to it at different times. I think this summer was difficult, and I kind of related to Jedi Master's soul, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to, deal with that part of myself that has good intentions but maybe oversteps. I think you can see yourself in lots of characters if you allow yourself to be honest about how it's affecting you. The Kenobi television show, I think, is huge for. Speaking of Kenobi's failure, about the worst kind of trauma this man can go through of like, all I want to do is protect this one kid, Luke Skywalker. I'm obsessed with that. I have no life but protecting this one kid because I failed Anakin as a kid and he turned around and slaughtered other kids and I'm the worst person ever. And coming back from that deepest, darkest hatred of himself, having hope again, like, I think all of us, not all of us, I think a lot of us could see ourselves in Kenobi with how we process our own failures. So there's all sorts of ways to see yourself in Star Wars always. But to answer Rick's question about the first time is like, I think the first time I saw myself in Star Wars, it was all happening and I had no language for it or deep understanding of it until much later in life. And I think for me, it was relating to Luke over Han. I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, boys look like Han Solo, boys look like Harrison Ford. And I was 5 and I didn't have chiseled jaws, in cheek and, beautiful brown hair. I looked like Luke. I had, a doughy little kid face and, blonde hair that was just kind of there flopping around, not looking cool at all. And all the debates in school, again, the perspective of time, it was a normal conversation to have about who is Leia going to choose. Even if Empire Strikes Back is like, looks like she chose Han, but maybe Luke still has a chance for getting the girl. And all that, like, are you a Luke? Are you a Han? All that stuff. And only as I got older and I like did comedy bits about Star Wars and really tried to dig in, even though it was comedy, with like, why the obsession with Star Wars? Why the connection to Luke Skywalker is like, and I've said it before, but it's like looking around, particularly in the 80s, of so much pressure that masculinity looks like this. Masculinity looks like Stallone. It looks like Schwarzenegger. Maybe if you're lucky, it looks like Harrison Ford. Like, you can take a beating, but then you make a joke and get up and keep fighting like he does in Indiana Jones. Masculinity did not look like a sensitive guy with wispy blonde hair who says, I care. Well, no one's really listening to him. It did not look like a guy who triumphed by saying, no, I don't want to hurt anybody. I want to have mercy on people who have failed me and hurt me. I'm going to throw away my weapon and be entirely convinced of who I am. I mean, Return of the Jedi is for 1983, that victory of saying, it's basically like a self-help video that would be mocked at the time if people perceived it for what it was fully of, I am who I know who I am, and you can't tell me who I am, Emperor. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, I'm throwing down my lightsaber. Like, it's a self-help video. Yeah. But it has amazing power, particularly always. But in that time when masculinity was so defined as strength, muscles, domination, merciless, that it wasn't until later how much I realized how much I got to see myself sensitive, scrawny, erring toward pacifism in Luke Skywalker. And then I took it that step farther and said, okay, if I am a white person, a white male who gets all of these different kinds of men, that I get to pick one as most like me. Look how important it was to me to get to see myself in Luke Skywalker when I had this plethora to choose from. And that has made me deeply understand everyone deserves to see themselves in some way, that everyone should be able to get to have the experience that I got to have with Luke Skywalker. And why would we want to deny that joy to anyone? It doesn't hurt me for somebody else to go, I see myself in Reva. That doesn't hurt me one damn bit. And if I'm imaginative, I can see myself in Reva. So the experience of seeing myself as Luke Skywalker, I didn't even realize it was happening. And as I get older, the gifts of that just keep adding up over the years.
Lovely. Well said. I always say Return of the Jedi was made by a San Francisco hippie from the 60s in the heart of a really interesting and problematic era.
Yep. So, Jennifer, do you have any other thoughts about Star Wars as a religion?
Oh, yeah. The way it differs is that you have people in religion who are trying to create converts, right? You're trying to preach the gospel. But what has happened with Star Wars, I feel like it was like that. We're preaching the gospel, and now you have people who don't want people to be a part of this religion, who are they're like trying to keep people out. And if you want to go, like, if George Lucas, we're gonna get really sacrilegious. George Lucas is like Jesus. So then who are the prophets? Dave Filoni is one of the prophets, right? We're gonna go into it.
But what you both have said today, my final thought on it, what you both said today is echoes, I think, what our purpose has long been here at ForceCenter, to have fun. We love discussing, Claude and vet weirdos and glup shittos and all those things. We love that. We love the big moments. We love those moments when it sweeps over us. I think all three of us had that on the show, where someone else is saying something and like that joy of, oh God, that means so much. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for adding clarity and all those kind of things. But yeah, it is this idea that I always, when I'm asked to describe the show at a party or friends, I say, we're here, we'll talk about anything you don't like about a Star Wars movie, but we are not going to let you take it away from that 5-year-old dressed up as Rey, or that person finding themselves in Reva, like you said. Or, Jen, you bring up The Acolyte, a show that's been in the crosshairs for so many dumb reasons. The discussion points are maddening and frustrating. At the end of the day, it's just you want to look across at people and say, I know you don't like it. I know what you're trying to prove. I know what articles you're reading. And I know what channels you're watching. But this person, in this case, Jen Landa, is moved by this show. It's valuable. It's art with a purpose. Don't you want to defend that ideal? Don't you want to defend that as a franchise? And either you are with us or you're not, and that's fine. But love these moments when Star Wars speaks to us all through our lives.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. So I think we should wrap it up there. Ken, do you want to take us home?
I do. Thanks for being with us on this truncated edition of We've All Gotta Go. Force Center, Blue Sky and Threads is where you can find us right now. Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram, Facebook page is Force Center Podcast. We're available as a podcast, not a spot. Just search and find us. Merch if you're watching on YouTube down below, fourth wall, or you can go to tpublic.com/user/Force Center. Patreon.com/Force Center. You can support us directly, help us reach 415 paid supporters so we can do a private live stream for you. And follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Jen, where can they find and follow you?
You can find me on all the social media at Jennifer Landa or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There you go, Joseph. You're making a film. How can they help you?
You can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com, and you can read down just a little bit to the section about the film Dead Media. There's a link to an organization called Film North that can take one-time tax-deductible donations to the film. It's like a Kickstarter where the rewards are a tax deduction, and you help me make the film. And I could really use some help. So if you're interested at all, check it out. And if you're not interested, I totally understand. Thank you for all the support here on ForceCenter. We have answered the cues.